Thank you all for coming to my talk, and welcome to Androbugs framework and Android application security vulnerability scanners. Okay, and I'm Yusheng, and this is my Chinese name. And I got my master's from National Tsinghua University in Taiwan last year, and this research is part of my master's thesis. And I currently work in MediaTek, and we do something similar to trusted execution environment, security enhanced Linux, and verified boot, and some hardware protections. But I'm not representing my employers, and all the vulnerabilities in these slides have been in this I have been responsibly disclosed to developer several months earlier. Okay, first I'll start with introducing a basic Android security background, and later I'll introduce why and how Android framework is designed, and some interesting vectors in Android application and how Android will detect some of the vulnerabilities. Okay, and finally I will tell you how can Android will help repackaging hackers. I'll move very fast because my slides have more than 90 pages. Okay, and I have lots of things to share with you. Okay, as Android security basic background, as you can see from the screenshots, every application play in its sandbox by unique Linux users Android ID. And the user ID is starting from 10,000 for a normal app. So if two apps want to share data with each other, they both need to specify the same Android shared user ID in the Android manifest and sign with the same certificate. And most companies do not consider it as a valid security hole if you have physical access to device. So allowing backup in Android system will be considered as a low priority vulnerability, but probably it may change after the next briefing. So if you exploit the security hole like master key in Android system to get the root privilege, and you are actually exploiting the security hole in Android system, not the application itself. And today, we're talking about the vulnerabilities in application itself. Okay. And so why do I want to design this Android application vulnerability scanner? Okay. In the past 3 years, there have been a lot of interest in research about Azure security mobile applications. The most significant research is presented in ACNCCS, the most dangerous code in the world, validating Azure certificates in no browser software. And also there are some good research like 7 ways to hang yourself with Google Android, which is published in DEFCON 19. But today, it seems that those security problems in application are solved completely. So the same mistakes are being made again and again. So I conclude that not all Android developers care about security, or they just forget. Okay. So in recent years, there are some static or dynamic analysis tool coming. So Draw is a good tool. But if I want to find security holes, I don't really want to install the app first to analyze the app. It's too tiresome. If you want to analyze lots of applications, and some commercial tools such as Fortify and Checkmark are paid and expensive, and they need a Java source code to analyze it, and which is not suitable for the penetration hackers. And in 2014, more and more companies or startups are starting to do their own cloud-based security and Android application vulnerability scanners. But still, you probably need to pay money to get your vulnerability report. And some online tools may need a lot of time to analyze. So you may have to wait for at least 5 to 10 minutes to get your report. And by the way, the massive analysis is usually not supported. Okay, so let me introduce Android framework. So it's a framework that helps you find valid security vulnerabilities in Android applications. And it's open source and written in Python. And it's a static analysis tool in your Android APKs, so it doesn't need your source codes. And it scans for the known common coding vulnerabilities, which also means that it does not scan for your logical security issues. And it's very efficient and doesn't need too much time to scan for your applications. And you can easily extend new features all vulnerability vectors. Okay, so it not only helps you find the vulnerabilities, but checks if the code is missing the best practice, getting sensitive information, or has dangerous shells comments. Okay, so Androbugs will help you find vulnerabilities like SSL vulnerability, fragment injections, and broken web view configs, and something like more readable, and etc. Okay, so, and some companies truly care about security vulnerabilities in mobile application it develops, but others only care about web security, even if they have their mobile application products. And here are some companies that recognize the vulnerabilities I reported. So Androbugs might not help you find the security host directly, but at least it can intrigue you with research on the code. And finally, you may find the security host. So that's the most important thing. So I'll introduce you some vulnerabilities data. Okay, so the design architecture. Okay, so Androguard is the decompiler of the Androbugs frameworks. However, Androguard does not support the security vulnerability check-ins originally. So I modified and added some code to this framework. And unlike other tools that use the JD Core or APK tool as their decompiler, Androbugs framework use the Androguard as decompiler because I think it is much more reliable. Yes. And the general technique for finding bugs in Androbugs framework. First, Androbugs framework decompiles APK by the Androguard. And second, Androbugs framework finds the potentially vulnerable code. So it will depend on the implementations of the vectors. So third, and Androbugs framework goes back to the potentially vulnerable code and traces again to confirm if it is a valid vulnerabilities. So the key point is that Androbugs framework does not try to analyze every line of the code. It only does this when it finds something interesting. Okay, and finally, it will generate a plain text report after finish the scan. A report includes a vector title, code path, severity level, and vector category detail recommendation, and some related links. So, and the analysis report will show you the severity level of each vector. So, as you can see, the severity level from the highest to the lowest. So, critical absolutely means a higher priority security vulnerabilities. So, the info severity level only tells you that Androbugs will support these vector checking. Okay, and so let me introduce you the new assistant engines in Androbugs frameworks. So there are three engines that are commonly used by Androbugs framework in implementing vectors: the static deviation engines, efficient string search engines, and filtering engines. So the static deviation engine is the core of Androbugs frameworks. So it is used by some vulnerability vectors in finding potential security vulnerabilities. And the most important thing is that Androbugs runs the code statically and partially. It tries to guess or predict application's behavior without running an app on a device. Okay, so just like a Delphi DVN in Android, the static DVN engine maintains a simple register table. So compared to the real DVN or out on your Android operating system, some use these instructions that remove or upcall remove. So the move resource command will put the previous calculations resource to register. And so since it's not running a DVN or out, so Androbugs framework doesn't know what the result is. So it should clear the resource from the register table. And so for example, this is an example of the dangerous or readable code. The constant one in the second parameter here means storing the preference in war readable mode. And in the third line of the smelting code, it gets the shared preference objects. So, but why you need to get this object if you want to analyze the dangerous or readable code? Okay, so why clear the immediate value from the register table for some instruction like aget, iget, or isget? Well, It's because that usually they call the Android SDK to get some updates or information on runtime. But those information are not something that you really need to analyze. Okay, and so this is just an example of showing that Androbugs firmware is emulating a basic DVM. So it will help you with analyzing some vectors. For example, when running the third command, invoke virtual, get shared preference. So Androbugs firmware knows the first and the second parameters are the string sensitive file and the integer 0x1 respectively. Okay. So, and generally, Androbugs firmware will search the potential vulnerable function codes or fields first. So on finding the potential vulnerable function codes or fields, it goes back to the start of the functions and analyze the opcode or smelting code one by one to confirm if it is a valid vulnerability. So if Androbugs firmware doesn't find the potential vulnerable functions, it will not continue to analyze from the start of the function and save the analysis time. Okay, and Androbugs firmware will analyze in bytecode or the opcode mostly. So it is much more efficient compared to any tools analyzing Java code. And currently there are some open source Android application vulnerability scanners. However, they scan the decompiled Java code by record expression mostly. So, and finding the vulnerable functions by comparing all the code from record expression is very efficient and slow. So Androbugs firmware is even 5 to 10 times faster than those tools. And why you need to analyze the Java code if you can analyze the smelting code or the bytecode? Yeah. So is the static DVM engine really working? Well, since the static DVM engine is not a real DVM OR in your Android phones, so it doesn't know, for example, the listing of your root directory. But why do you need to know that? So, and you must know some tools that support dynamic analysis, such as export firmware or drawer. It's good. But actually, I think most of the time you should find the vulnerability by static analysis first. It's not a good idea to start with dynamic analysis because it will take you too much time to install, run, and test every feature in applications, especially if you want to find vulnerabilities in lots of applications immediately. Okay, so the second one is the efficient string search engine. So usually you will use the record expression to search the strings, but it is quite inefficient. Also, we not only want to find whether the string exists or not, but the path sources where it is showing up. So consider we are searching the strings index file. The string search needs to be redesigned and fast. So in Android, strings are referenced by its index position. In other words, the offsets in string ID item arrays. So strings are not directly stored in the classes or functions index file. And the step for Androbugs firmware to compare first, it maps all the strings to IDs in the string ID item array. And second, it finds the strings by user's inputs and get the corresponding IDs. And third, it searches the code with opcode instruction 0x1 or 0x1A or 0x1B and compare IDs in step 2. So the efficient string search engine in Androbugs firmware is actually comparing the integer. Okay, so the filtering engines. So I won't say Androbugs firmware has no false positives. It's not humans. So it does detect some useless information. So Androbugs firmware provides some filtering functions in the filtering engines. So some advertisement libraries may never fix their vulnerabilities. So it's not worth to report the problems to them. So in this case, the vectors implementations can filter some useless results for you. Okay, so security vulnerabilities and vulnerability vectors implemented in Androbugs firmware. Okay, I'll give you a few concepts and ideas on how Androbugs how vulnerability vectors are implemented in Androbugs frameworks. Okay, so where do the vectors in Androbugs framework come from? Basically, I read lots of Android security books before starting this research. And the fundamental security knowledge in Android application is very important. I also read some past research papers and vulnerability reports, blogs, and try to find out if it is possible to make them into the vectors in Androbugs framework. So, how did I create a new vectors? I'll first search and find all the related information about vulnerabilities. And later, I'll make a simple app and run it on different platforms. For example, the Android ICS, Jelly Beans, or KitKat, Android Else, of Android emulators to verify I can truly reproduce it. So, consider all the possible cases you need to read the documents on Android websites. It's very important. And since the design of vulnerability vectors in Androbugs framework is smelling oriented, so you need to know what is the smelling code of a vulnerable code. You can simply decompile the proof of concept app to see the smelling code and think how to add the new vector into Androbugs framework. Okay, so after new vulnerability vector is designed on Androbugs framework, it needs to be tested with a vulnerable app and a non-vulnerable app. So it will make sure that the system can truly find these vulnerabilities. Okay, and to further enhance the accuracy, you should use more apps to test it and maybe fix the bugs if the implementation is not correct. Okay, so I'll introduce you some vulnerability findings by myself. And because of the time constraints, I want to give you a few examples of vulnerabilities and how I implemented them in Androbugs framework. And some of the vulnerabilities are interesting findings while researching on the code. Okay, so this is my routines to verify the vulnerabilities. First, I get the APK and analyze it with the Androbugs framework. So this system will generate a report after finishing the scan. If it reports potential security vulnerabilities, I manually decompile the app by other tools like APK tool, JDX, etc., and do dynamic analysis and verify if it is a valid vulnerabilities. So how do I confirm if it is a valid vulnerabilities? I'll make a proof of concept app. And you should always try to make a proof of concept app to prove and demonstrate the severity of your security vulnerability findings. Okay, so the word readable and word writables. So I talked about this vector earlier. The word readable or writable means that the file allows other application to read or write to it. So from Google's Android device website is very dangerous and likely to cause security holes. So after researching those are the functions that may use the word readable or writable. Okay, so on finding the function codes, the Androbugs will directly push them into the static deviation engines to check the mode to see if it is between 1 to 3. And report the one with vulnerable mode. In other words, report the ones that use the vulnerable constant value. Okay, so Baidu's more readables. So Baidu has a push message library that stores the push message is token in multiple readable. So, and many Baidu Android applications use these vulnerable Baidu push message library. So it is important that the library that contains the vulnerable code may be used by many applications. Okay, and this is another more readable vulnerability in Android NDK. Microsoft Office Mobile does not explicitly set the UMAX. So if you do not set the UMAX, it is much more permissive on Android ICS. So it means that every application can steal the file you downloaded from OneDrive if you are using the Android ICS. And at that time, when users want to edit their Word, Excel, or PowerPoint files, they can only download from their OneDrive. And at that time, nearly 30 to 40% of users are vulnerable. And okay, content provider vulnerability and directory traversals. So the content provider usually directly connects to the SQLite database in an app, or provides some file access in an app's private data source. So Android developers sometimes forget to set the default exported settings for content providers. And this may allow other applications to access a sensitive file directory. So if an app does not set the exported value for the content provider and the target SDK version is equal to or bigger than 17, the behavior is not the same in Android L and Android ICS. And while developers make the content provider exported on API level bigger or equal to 17, but not exported on API level lower than 17, there's no side effects if it is exported on API level less than 17. So it must be a mistake. And Androbugs will highlight these content provider vulnerabilities. Okay, so this is attack vectors. The key point is the exported data must be the sensitive data. Okay. And okay. So in the earlier version of Microsoft Bing, these content providers did not set the exported settings, which means it is exported by default on some platforms. So from the compiler Java code, you can see it allows other applications to access the files under its cache directory. Okay, so unfortunately, it used the file API. So, which is vulnerable to directory traversals. So, this is a proof of concept app. If you use the Microsoft Bing Android to search Facebook and log into your Facebook account, well, any other application on the device can steal the Facebook access tokens and compromise your accounts. And Microsoft fixed this vulnerability within 2 weeks. Okay, and by the way, we should always choose a good Java decompiler. These two decompilers do not show the same results. So this is a very famous Java decompiler. So you can see this code will not always be executed on this decompiler, but it will always throw the file not found exception. But this is not correct, and this one is the correct one. Okay. And the WebView file access vulnerability and exporting components. So WebView Android allows developers to embed a web browsers into an application. So Androbugs will support finding many vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in web views. So one of the vulnerabilities is the set allow file access. So if a set allow file access in web view settings, web settings is set to true or not set, which means it's true by default, it will allow other application to read its internal files or database with corrupted URL. So this is a sample in Taobao Android. Its activity is exported, and it gets the links from the my browser URL key and navigate to a link. Okay, and additionally allows file access in its web view. So you can request Taobao Android to view the files in its sandbox or malicious pages on the SD card. Okay. And so how can I track these vulnerabilities? First, I find the function codes to the package name, the web settings, and store all the function codes And second, I check which resource cases and method does not include the function calls to set up files. If so, it is vulnerable. So if the web view sets the set allow final access functions and put it into the static engine and report loads that allow final access which are vulnerable. Okay. So as of vulnerabilities. So Androbugs framework finds the access of vulnerabilities in both Java codes and web views. But if I find access of vulnerability, I will verify with some dynamic analysis tools like feeders or Bursuit. Okay, and since there are many papers about access of vulnerabilities in Android applications, I think I don't need to explain how Android person would detect access of vulnerabilities. So I'll give you examples. So in the earlier version of Yahoo Mail, the sync Yahoo contact feature has access of vulnerabilities. However, the most interesting thing is that the login page does not have the access of vulnerabilities. But once you get the access token from the sync Yahoo contact request, you almost have the full account privilege. So using these access token in cookies, you can query users' information. And so in 2014, there is still access of vulnerabilities in Yahoo's most important mobile application products. And unfortunately, when you log into your Yahoo Mail the first time, it will pop up and ask you if you want to see your Yahoo contact. So it is very friendly, you know. And so the implicit broadcase. So if you send a broadcase that contains sensitive information and you do not explicitly specify the destinations, then this is a vulnerable implicit broadcase. And developers have multiple ways to protect the broadcase. They can either protect it with signature level protections or a local broadcase manager. And so here's an example. So last year I reported a bug to Yahoo. And what's these vulnerabilities? So if you do not run Yahoo Messenger Android in the foreground, Yahoo Messenger will pop up a new notification on receiving a new messages, like this one. Okay, so unfortunately, whenever it receives a new message, it will put it into the sensitive message into the bundles and sends the broadcast without specifying the receiver permissions. Okay, so the result is the attacker can make an exported broadcast receiver and receive these private messages. And on receiving a new message, my approval concept app will print the message in logs. So here you can see the private messages here. Okay. And okay. Dynamically register unprotected broadcast receivers. So Android developers sometimes forget to protect dynamically registered broadcast receiver. They only notice the security protection of statically registered broadcast receiver in Android manifest. So the attack vector is that other applications can send the broadcast to change its original behavior. Okay, and also, and the key point is the behavior must be the sensitive one. And also, you should use the signature level protection or local broadcast manager to protect your broadcast from being triggered by any malicious applications. Okay, so here's an example. So in the earlier version of Twitter via Android, and Twitter security team recognized it as a vulnerabilities. So Find Android registers broadcast receivers in its base activity. Okay, so on receiving the co.find.android.finish broadcast, it will terminate the app. Okay, so normally you cannot force to terminate another application without a system privilege. And unfortunately, all activities in the Vine Android inherits from the base action bar activities. So if the base action bar activities is finished, the application is closed safely. And you can see the proof of concept application here. It tries to broadcast every 15 seconds by the learn managers. So the result is that users cannot always use the Vine app if the co.vine.android.finish broadcast repeatedly. Okay, so what if it is the vulnerabilities in system applications? So the Android system has a basic application installing protections. You cannot install apps from unknown sources if you get to the settings apps, securities, and allow unknown sources. So if you allow unknown sources, it will show you these warning messages. Okay, but this Huawei phone is different. You can bypass these unknown source check. So in the package installer activity class of its package installer, it has a config called install directory, and that can be set by external application. So if an install directory is set to true, then the dialog of the unknown source warning will not show up. And more precisely, it means that every application can set the install directory value to true and bypass the unknown source check. Okay. So the result is you will never see the install block again when install in a new application, even if you do not allow application from unknown sources. Okay. So from the previous slides, there must be some vulnerabilities I'm very familiar with, but the problem is that the same mistakes are being made again and again. And okay, so let me introduce you the massive analysis tools in Androbugs framework. So the Androbugs framework is integrated with MongoDB, which is a non-SQL database. And the analysis results will be stored by vector ID and package name for later analysis. So how I do the massive scanning? First, I find target companies and download all of their Android applications. And second, I run the Androbugs framework massive analysis tools. And third, I find the targeting vulnerability by vector ID and get the analysis reports from the Androbugs framework. And later I spend some time trying to read the Java code and sometimes the smelting codes and do dynamic analysis and try to reproduce the vulnerabilities. And it takes time and patience to reproduce the bugs. So it even takes more time for you to teach the company's security response center if they don't know Android securities. And really, not all the people in the security response centers are interested in Android securities. Yes. And okay. And finally, I will make a proof of concept app to prove that it is a valid vulnerabilities and report it. So the Androbugs framework provides some tools for you to do the massive analysis. And you can immediately find the vulnerability you want to research on. So here's the examples. Download all the app you want to analyze and make a unique analysis tag and a number for these scannings. And simply runs the Androbugs scanners. So it will start to analyze all the apps you want one by one. So I'll give you a quick demos. And last week I scanned about 5,000 applications. And okay. So I use today's dates as the NS build number and back has the NS tag. And now I have a NS resource. Okay, sorry. Okay, now I have the NS resource of these 5,000 applications in my database. And a report summary tool will list the vectors and number of the vulnerable applications by vector and the severity levels. For example, it will list the apps that have the YVRCE or SO vulnerabilities, YVSs. So amongst the 5,000 applications, there are 126 applications that enables the debuggables. So the searching speed in the report by vector key tool is optimized. Okay. Okay. So you list all the applications that enable the debuggables. Okay, so I can grab the companies I'm interested in. Okay. And later check the complete report. So this is a complete report of these applications. And I can also check which app does not check the SSO certificate in values. Okay. And which app use the vulnerable JavaScript interface. Okay. And I can also grab my favorite companies. Okay, and which app use the vulnerable JavaScript interface. Okay, and okay, thank you. So the report summary tool in Androbugs will list all the vectors and number of vulnerable applications by the vectors. Okay, and create the vectors you're interested in. So for example, you can find which apps use the vulnerable JavaScript interface immediately. So here's examples. So Taobao Wireless Trust Android allows you to pay money to buy something like special gifts or online credits. However, the debug mode is enabled. And unfortunately, if you log in with your username and password, this app will print your username and password in logs. So with the massive analysis, you can find these vulnerabilities immediately. Okay. And so Androbugs will create some vectors for you to check the protection made by the developers. So the hacker category in Androbugs is specifically designed for APK repackaging hackers for fun. And the vectors with hacker categories are not vulnerabilities. And some Android developers already know that you are going to repackage their app. So they make several checks to protect their applications. So the check will lie if an app detects itself as not using the SSL certificate pin correctly, it never probably will fail. Or if it detects its signed certificate is not matched with the predefined one, so it becomes unable to use the logins. So Androbugs will help you find the checkpoints faster, and you can remove or modify their smarting code. That is, it gives you the hints. Okay, so breaking SSL certificate pin with Androbugs firmware. So, what's SSL certificate pin? The Android application must only trust the root certificates is specified in its own keystrokes. So, which prevent from the minimum attacks even if the malicious certificate is installed on user's device. So, dynamic hooking is also possible to break SSL pins, but what if we want to make a modified app? So, a reverse engineering hacker would like to put the test root certificate into the keystroke in the app and repackage the app to allow for minimal attack. So, what they want to know so as to add the test certificate to test or repackage. So they would like to know the possible keystroke passwords, the code to load the keystrokes, and the possible keystroke location. Okay, so here's an example. Tesla Motors Android is using the SSL certificate pins. So normally you cannot create a connection with Tesla Motors server under the in the middle, even if you add your own root certificate to your device. Okay, so I use video to simulate the main middle environments. So you can see here that the main middle attackers always cannot create a connection with the servers. Okay, and so this is a report from Androbugs firmware. So Androbugs firmware helps you find the possible Tesla Motors keystrokes and where it is loaded. And also, you can see that Androbugs firmware lists the classes that may store the password to open the keystrokes. Okay, so this is the password to open the keystrokes. So, and later you can use a keystroke management tool, which is called the protocols, and the keystroke, the password you found to open the keystrokes. And originally, you can only find one root certificate that Tesla Motors is using. Then import your own root certificates into the trust.keystrokes. And later, replace the trust.keystrokes in the APK with the modified ones. And finally, start the APK again. Okay, and so uninstall and install the modified Tesla Motors Android. So you cannot do the main middles. And you can see the network traffic now when logging with your username and password. Okay, and so repackaging an app should be better because if you install a malicious root certificate on Android 4.4 or the newer device, it will pop up a notification to users and saying that the network may be monitored. Yes, network may be monitored. Okay, and it's debuggable. What's this? When repackaging an app, hackers may want to see more logs, so they enable the debuggable flag. So developers check this flag to see if their apps are already being hacked. So on Stack Overflow website, Android developers often use these code to check whether their application is in debug mode. Okay, so if a debug mode is enabled, the applications may not check the SSL certificate, may not check the SSL certificate by default. So which is not the same behavior as the release versions. So we want to enable the debug mode, see more logs, and remain the function the same as the release versions. Okay, so the solution is to break it. So how does Androbugs find these debug mode check-ins? Okay, I analyzed the smelting code of checking debuggable, and first it searched the calling field to the end application's info flags and gets the next instructions. And simply put, it analyzes the related bytecode to make sure that it matches the checking debuggable patterns. Okay, so breaking application signature-based protections. So if you find the behavior of an app is different, for example, unable to log in with the correct username and password after repackaging the app, probably the app is checking the signature and has the basic signature-based protections. And some Android developer knows that the application you have repackaged cannot be signed with their own private certificates, so they compare the signature with the predefined ones. So if a compare fails, the app may crash or cannot use some features. Okay, so a past Red Hat USA 2013 briefing, how to build a spy phone, is very popular on YouTube. Okay, and the general technique demonstrating building a spy phone is repackaging the app. Okay, but the truth is not all the apps are so easy to repackage. If you have tried to repackage many applications, it's because that some Android developers already know you are going to hack or repackage their app. So they check and compare the signature with signature over the certificate with the predefined one. So if you are not using the master key vulnerabilities, normally your application cannot sign with Yahoo's or Microsoft or Facebook's private certificates. Okay, so some Android developers checks for these application certificates. So for example, in WeChat 5.2 Android, you can find if you repackage the app, you can no longer log into WeChat Android successfully. So Androbugs will help you find the signature-based security protections, and you can have the directions to remove the protections. Okay, so from the report of the Androbugs, we will know where the checking is implemented. So it is an example that Tesla Motors Android computes the hash code of the signature and compare with the predefined ones. So to determine whether it is bypassing the certificate pin or something. Okay. And okay, basically for decoding hacks. And it's not vulnerabilities. And some developers tend to hide sensitive strings with base64 encoding, and they think it's much more secure. And Androbugs will try to decode every base64 line strings for fun. And so in the latest version of Thunderbird Androids, it encodes some links or API key with the base64. Yeah, and I don't know why. Maybe it tries to prevent from the grab command for getting sensitive strings directories. Okay, and this is a very interesting code. And I truly think the developers in innocence. So in the earlier version of WeChat Android, you can find the developers encoded this word into a base 64 string. Oh, but don't blame on developers. Whoever knows that somebody like Androbugs will try to decode every base 64 line strings. Yes. So Androbugs will sometimes help you find diamonds, just like the interesting finding in WeChat. Okay, and you cannot get the source code of Androbugs from the GitHub. And I also release Windows versions, so you don't need to install Python 2.7 to run the Androbugs frameworks. Okay, but please remember that if you get a report from Androbugs, please do not directly copy and pass the report into the security response centers. They're not stupid, so they will later ask you some technical questions. So verify the issues and make a proof of concept first before reporting your findings. Okay, conclusions. And not all the companies know about mobile security and have the same attitude or standard towards securities. So you need to convince them of your idea. So we prepare with a proof of concept. So even the people working at security response centers, some people don't really know Android securities. So you need to be patient and try to understand or grasp every vulnerability as deep as you can. So the most interesting things you have found may be the most dangerous security holes many developers have made. So if you find any interesting attack vector that is not currently supported by Androbugs firmware. So just implement your vector in Androbugs firmware and run the massive analysis. And probably you will find some amazing results. Okay, and some mistakes are being made again and again. So Androbugs firmware can help you find those security vulnerabilities faster and easiest. Okay, thank you. And